Apologies for the late start. That was me filling out a pension form. We are actually live, and the meeting therefore will be recorded, and members and officers must use the desk microphones in order for this to work. Only 2 microphones in addition to the chairman's can be on at the same time. Mobile phones, please, would we switch them off or put them on silent? Fire exits here and here, going out into Mill Hill car park, not to use the lifts, please. Any apologies for absence? I believe we've just got Councillor Nunn. Okay. Any members to declare interests? None. Okay, cool. Right, so the minutes from the working group last week, due to the short turnaround time between today's meeting and the last meeting, the minutes will be considered at the next meeting of the working group. This is due to the fact the panel, we wouldn't have had enough time to read them to be able to review the drafts in time for the meeting tonight. Are we all okay with that? Yeah, cool. Okay, so now we come on to the draft report to council on the outcomes of phase 1 of the community governance review. So Leah's going to run through the report, which provides the full outcome of phase 1 of the community governance review for Market Harborough, and proposals for the second phase of the review if the council agrees to proceed. And actually, I've forgotten something procedurally to introduce ourselves, because we are actually live. So I should actually say hello. I'm David Page, chairman of the community governance review. I'm also district councillor for one of the district councillors for Logan Ward. Perhaps we can start off with you, Councillor Brimner.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the other councillor for Logan Ward, Councillor Dr. Paul Bremner. Thank you.
Councillor Phil Knowles, Grey Baden and Arden Ward.
Councillor Darren Woodywis, Welland Ward.
Jo McAvoy, Electoral Services Team Leader.
Sheena Mortimer, Electoral Services Manager.
Leah Mickleborough, Head of Democratic Services, Elections and Monitoring Officer.
Hi, I'm Alex Wotton. I'm Democratic Services Officer.
Councillor Jo Asher, Lubbenham Ward.
Okay, so now we've done that, let's get into the meat of this. So there is a recommendation that we're being asked to look at tonight, and that is that the Community Governance Review Working Group recommends 3 items here. Do you want to run through things first before I read through those?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. And apologies to councillors, because I understand on the printed versions of your report, it's not that clear what Appendix 1 and 2 are. So just to clarify, and I'll hold it up, maybe the owl will pick it up as I'm talking. Appendix 1 is the report on phase 1. And then there's lots of appendices to Appendix 1, which is all the reports that went along with all the data. And then Appendix 2 is the next blue page, which is preparation for phase 2. It's headed up that way. So hopefully that's a little bit clearer in terms of what Appendix 1 and 2 are.
Councillor Knowles.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Can we actually detail it in the report and refer to it as Appendix 1 and Appendix 2? Because otherwise, I can imagine 6, 7, 8, 9 months down the road, somebody's going to say, well, there's nothing in here about Appendix 1 and 2, and we all know what that's going to lead to. So I think it might be worthwhile if we're actually moving something, we move
I think
we should be moving.
Good idea. Can we do that?
Yeah, and we can certainly capture in the minutes as well to ensure that's properly reflected.
Great idea.
Yeah. So it may be helpful if I start on Appendix 1, which is the phase 1 report. I have in the documents tried to put some yellow highlights of things that we particularly need to do tonight. And the first thing that we need to do tonight is actually at the very, very end of that blue report, which is to determine whether or not you want to support in principle the establishment of a parish council for the unparished area of Market Harborough. And if you do so, that will be the recommendation to council. Obviously, if you don't, then the recommendation to council would be not to. Now, you'll also see and hopefully realise all the work in phase 1, all the documents and the narrative is pretty much a copy and paste from the reports you've seen for the last 2 weeks. So there shouldn't be anything new or any surprises within that report. So it may be helpful to pause at this stage, Chair, and just check whether members want what recommendation they'd like to make.
Okay, so I'll start. Councillor Asher, do you want to? Sorry, I didn't. Did you put your hand up first? Did you?
I'm just going to propose, if I have a seconder, that we recommend to the council that the parish council is established in Market Harborough, or that option is given to full council.
Okay. Does anybody?
If that makes sense.
Okay. Well, that's everyone in favour of that. Yeah. So I think that's carried them.
Well, that's very straightforward then. I will just. Unfortunately, there are a few more things I would like your opinion on. So now we've hit that point. That means what we need to think about is how we do the second phase of consultation. The second phase of consultation is that phase 2 document in your agenda. And this is a little bit more complex than the phase 1. So phase 1 was fairly straightforward. Do you support a parish council or not? If you do, why? And that helped inform our opinion, or if you don't, why? Whereas this time, we've got to consult on the sort of matters that will go into setting up a new council. So the council size, warding arrangements, and there's the potential to consult on a few other matters as well. So the name seems fairly straightforward, being Market Harborough Parish Council. But the other matters, such as warding and council size, we debated at the last meeting, and hopefully I've captured your thoughts and considerations in there, because I know there were some split views, and I've tried to explain the different thinking that went into those proposals. And on the basis of what you discussed last week, Joe and Sheena are busy working up some warding options for that consultation. I think the first key thing I'd like to just get your views on is we're going to be consulting on what we call a narrative basis. And what that means is, rather than just straight yes or no questions, we're going to be setting out the thinking. So we say, we think a council size of 16 would be best because of these reasons. Do you support this? Do you not support this? And please state your rationale. So it gives members of the public a bit more flavour about why we've reached those conclusions, rather than a very raw consultation, which might mean, especially when these matters are quite technical, we get some answers that we just can't implement.
Okay. Can we have comment? Do you have any comments on that, actually, Councillor Knowles?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I mean, I think last week we sat and looked at a number of options. And I think it's fair to say that our office has identified, because we asked a very blunt question, if you recall, which is the best one, which one works best. And I think the simple answer was that whilst there were good reasons for having more or less or whatever, 16 was the best option that the officers recommended. There were a raft of reasons why. And I think what we should be doing is, whatever we do, however we publicise this, however we consult, we need to concentrate on that number, that's 16. And then we need to be giving people as much information, as much background information as we possibly can as to why it's 16. You know, don't start trying to explain why we haven't included 23, 22, 21, 20. Just concentrate on the 16, explain why. And also give the information that if it proves that we need to increase that number, there will be an option in the future. But I think if we sort of nail the colours to the mast and say, look, we've got 16, which I think we went into some detail last week about, and then it just ties it down, Chairman.
Does everyone agree with that, actually? Because I certainly am in favour of doing that. Councillor Woodworth?
Yes, I agree with that sentiment entirely. Keep it simple. It allows for a straight decision process and the education as well. But you just referred to if we want to change it in the future, which takes me back to the question I asked last time, which you said was in the presentation but wasn't. So just to get it on the record, that we need another community governance review to actually change things in the future. So just for that.
Yeah.
That legislation will be retained. I mean, nothing changes about the ability to change any aspect of this in the future. Is that right?
Exactly. I think I put a paragraph in the appendix, but forgive me if I haven't. If I haven't, I can add it for the council report. So when we do the CGR, we look at the electorate forecast 5 years ahead. It's then recommended that councils do, principal councils do CGRs every 10 years. So in 10 years' time or 2038, the Unitary Council can then say, okay, it was right up to 2033, but we've had 5 years growth and we've got another 5 years forecast, and the strategic sites will potentially be being built out by that point. So by then, we need to start looking at rejigging and re-examining things. If necessary, there can also be a demand for whatever reason to look again. I mean, I looked, there's Camborne in Cambridgeshire, which was built as a new village and then became a new town. It's between Cambridge and Bedford. And they have done exactly this. As their area's been built out and grows, they have persistently done community governance reviews to increase the number of councillors.
Leah, just there isn't a page. Can I just ask for future if we have page numbers on things? That would be helpful. But on here, it does actually say future options quite clearly on here, and that it is the working group noted that it's good practice. I think from what you probably said, for authorities to undertake governance reviews in their community on a 10-yearly basis. As such, the Unitary Council will be able to review the boundaries and council size established. Okay, and look at whether this is right once the new council has an opportunity to establish itself and set its direction in the long term. So that's covered. Okay, so on that basis, how would you like us now to proceed? Sorry. Not trying to ignore you.
In terms of communicating with the public, I agree with what's been said about trying to explain succinctly why we come to 16. But I think the fora were more focused upon that the parish council would be divided along existing ward boundaries. And I think that's exactly what we're proposing. So I feel that people won't be too concerned necessarily about the number, but they'd be much more happy that, yeah, you've done it. You've got the boundaries that we're looking for.
If I recall, we actually did talk about it being simple, straightforward, and cost effective as well, actually, to be perfectly honest. Well, that's what I think I remember. And that does make sense, the logic behind it.
I don't think you need to go into that in great detail, but highlight what the result is, and I think they'd be quite happy with it. I'm making that assumption anyway.
And if I may, Chair, we had the first meeting this week of the Local Government Reorganisation Elections team. Myself and Sheena have attended. It's very clear we need building blocks to work from for that process. We couldn't go through the process of rebuilding from scratch. So building within district wards is so helpful for that, albeit it would be helpful for that process, particularly in regard to Welland, to be able to break it down into wards, because if not, it's going to be problematic for the proposals.
Okay, Councillor Dawes.
Just one quick point. I mean, I think to use your phrase, just whatever page number this is, because there's no page numbers. It actually says, take into account the forecast electorate growth, etc. 16 was agreed, and then it goes Littlebowden and Logan, which is the very point Councillor Brendan's making. It's easily identifiable that we're talking about wards that people can readily identify with. So we've got the number fixed, we've got the identity of the wards fixed, and I think that will make it easier, and it will make people very confident in what we're doing and what we're recommending.
Total agreement on that, I think. Do you want to comment?
We could take the approach that we're letting you know about this. There are 1 or 2 cases, so simply Logan's a great example. We could still do either a 3-councillor ward or a 2-and-1 and happily consult openly on that one. But in other areas, like on the 16, we could say, do you have any fundamental reasons for this? So it's really heavily emphasised. We're going with this unless we see clear evidence why.
So my point would be, as long as we are very clear with the principles by which we've arrived at that place, I think it makes logical sense. And I think then that discussion can flow from there. But those tenets are quite important, I think, to establish. Okay, are there any other comments on this particular piece before do you want to move on from here? Do we need to actually do a vote on this?
No, we can do one collective one at the end.
All right. Any other comments? Scrutinising now. Councillor Bremner? Okay. Okay, Leah, do you want to lead on?
The next one, it's possibly a little bit more we might get some split opinions on. So we have mooted along the way that when we do the second round of consultation, there might be the option of helping the parish council understand what some of the priorities might be from their residents. You know, there's this opportunity out there. So we could say to them, you know, would you be interested in an early transfer of parks and open spaces versus cemeteries versus bus stops? But also, what else might you want to see within the town? So we've got the option. Bus stops. I think we have. Oh, the bus shelters. Sorry, rather than bus stops. So we've got the chance to have that conversation here. I think the hesitation I've got is I don't want to be seen to be preemptive or forcing anyone's hand in that regard, because obviously the councillors will have their own priority when elected.
Can I have views on that, please? Because I think this is actually something where there will be the possibility of creating expectations early on delivery of certain things. So I think this is quite an important piece.
I think it's a very important canvassing opportunity. It's not often we actually get out into our community and ask them what they want. So yeah, I agree. We should be asking those questions, but with the caveats, it may not necessarily be actioned. Also, yeah. So can you just explain? Is there a phasing of handover? Because I kind of always assume there's Big Bag Day and it just takes it over from the beginning. So.
So at the moment, the proposals are, once the reorganisation is agreed by council, then we potentially have the option of using the special expenses panel to be a shadow authority. I'll emphasise a shadow authority can only be comprised of elected representatives. You can't form, say, unelected people to act as a shadow. So we've got the special expenses panel, which could really usefully serve in that role. We have to transfer allotments on day one. They are the only thing that has to transfer. A specific legislation which says in CGR's allotments have to transfer on day one. But of course, the parish council won't actually be elected and meeting at that point. So what we are basically recommending is we plan on carrying on delivering the service from the 1st of April. The parish council would reimburse us for the costs of it, so it would move from being a special expense cost to a parish precept cost. So there's no net impact on the taxpayer from doing that. Once the parish council starts to meet, it can then determine how it wants to run its allotments. Now, it might determine, actually, allotments, things are ticking along okay, we'll leave that one for a while. District council carry on doing the service, all good. But we have a lot of other assets and we have a lot of other things we could be doing. Now, there is the possibility of transferring other assets on day one. That would all need to be embedded into the reorganisation order, which needs to be passed before we get the structural changes order made for local government reorganisation. For that reason, what I've proposed here is that we only transfer the allotments and we leave the other things so that we can start to get the special expenses panel input into that, but the parish council then can have a say in whether or not it wants those assets once they are elected in May 2027. We will, by that point, get a Section 24 order from the Secretary of State, which will say, if you want to transfer assets that are worth more than, usually for capital assets, £1 million, you will need to get permission from the unitary authority to do it. Now, we're starting to think about what that looks like. In some areas, it's a bit more challenging than others, but we'd have to bear that in mind, albeit there's a question then of, does a unitary want to be really managing open spaces when it doesn't do it in other parts of its area? Does it want to be managing cemeteries when it doesn't do it in other parts of its area? Probably not. So there'd be some logic in, working collectively to say, what does the parish council want to do? What does the unitary council want to keep hold of? Like, I should imagine the more contentious one would be things like leisure centre, enterprise centre and innovation centre, probably not. They're the things that really do start getting into more complex management and things. So you'd want to be a bit more stable before they're taken on. But things like open spaces and cemeteries, they're ones that might be quite straightforward to do in year one. And then we just keep doing it gradually and then allow the parish council to scale up, would be the plan.
Thank you for that, Leah. Questions? I think, Paul, you had your
hand
up first.
Question just worthy of clarification, really. You have Welland Park. Now, as an asset, do you consider the asset the whole of Welland Park, or within it, you've got tennis court, you've got a bowls pavilion that's been renovated, you've got all the tarmac paths, you've got the flower beds, you've got the wages of the gardener. Do you divide that asset up as I've just described, or do you describe it as one asset? Because that has implications.
Yeah.
There's any number of answers to that. It could
Thank
be
you.
all one
That's
asset.
great.
It could be, no, we're just like the tennis courts and nothing else. But actually there's practicalities about that and what the future is. And that's why you have to be very careful about cherry picking through this process. And it's, sensible discussions way forward.
Because if as it happens, I think we need to be, or the public need to be really clear. If there is a sort of sense of, well, we just want the tennis courts of Welland Park, then who takes the responsibility for the rest of it? Is that the unitary? Okay, so, okay, that makes a lot of interesting thoughts.
Okay, Councillor
Yeah,
Knowles.
well, the public will have fun with that.
Councillor Knowles.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that the bottom line is what we said a little earlier on about keeping things simple. We don't want to have any predetermination on this. We want to keep options open. I think we do what we have to do, which is obviously the allotments. And then we make people aware that there will be the opportunity to make the decisions going forward as to what else we do or do not cede over to the new town council. I think obviously the town council will have a real interest in determining what they want to do and how they want to do it. And I don't think we should be pushing onto them anything. We should really leave it open and keep this option open for the public to be involved. So I think for me, it's, no predetermination on it, options open. We'll cede over what we have to do, but we keep it very, very simple. Otherwise, we start complicating it, it's going to get messy.
Okay, Councillor Asher, you're looking this way. Just wondered if you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, just a question for Leah, I guess. So, for example, if we just handed over the allotments as we have to do, and everything else stayed with Harbour District, and then obviously the unitary. If, for example, the parish council wanted to take on, for example, the whole of Welland Park, but the unitary said, no, actually, we want to keep Welland Park because that's an asset. How would that? How would we deal with that? Would that be an issue? Would it sort of, the unitary would just say no and that would be it? Because I think that could be something we could be met with down the line.
Leah, do you want to answer that one?
So there's various elements to that. I mean, ultimately, it would then become a unitary asset if it's not taken on day one. Or during the initial shadow authority of the unitary period. There are various mechanisms though, so forgive me, I don't want to say the wrong thing. There are various mechanisms for communities to basically say we demand taking over certain community assets in specific circumstances. What we also had announced yesterday, in the yesterday, as well as the King's Speech, there was various pieces of legislation published which were agreed just before Parliament broke up. And one of them says that when there are new unitaries created, there is going to have to be a specific neighbourhood governance structure put in place. But it doesn't give any details on what that actually is and looks like. So that could place some expectations around community assets and management and how that's looked after. It might not, but it might be there's some mechanisms emerging. But ultimately, it still will be a unitary asset.
So basically, if it's not handed over on that first day, it would probably be better to sort that out before the shadow authority finishes, because I think would we have more say in it during that period rather than it's just all handed over to the unitary, the doors are shut and they say no to the parish. Yeah, thank you.
Can I just ask then from the unitary side of things then, is there anything that's been established elsewhere? Because what I'm interested in to know, and I agree with Councillor Knowles about, we're agreeing too much actually recently. I think it's something's got to change. But I think the complexity of some of the things, particularly where there are commercial interests, And by commercial interests, as much as renting out the tennis courts or whatever else, it is complex. But I would imagine that the Unitary Authority, I'm just thinking here, would want to retain as much income as they possibly can, which would embrace probably a lot of the assets that sit within the community. I just want to know if there are any principles, guiding principles in other locations where this has been either negotiated or established, where this kind of thing has happened previously.
One thing we will have emerging over the next few months is the assets working group is sort of looking at all the different types of assets that each hold. So it will show actually we've got a bit of an anomaly in, for example, Harborough, because Harbour District does that, where in other areas it's done at a parish level. So we'll start to see some of that emerging, and the unitary go, do we really want to take on the running of that just in that specific area? Because that's not going to be sort of long-term efficient and helpful. So what might be an income stream actually becomes a bit of a loss position because of the way that they work. So that to it. One interesting piece was in North Yorkshire when they formed the unitary, in that they basically said to all the districts and so on, you know, in terms of what you transfer and where we get involved, we're not going to worry about you transferring all of these types of assets. If these are community assets, you get on and do with your parishes. We'll only focus on things that are worth this much. I mean, when you're talking about income things, I think it'll be more car parks, potentially leisure centres, because there's public health benefits to those and have public health functions. And like I say, things like innovation centre and enterprise centre because of the economic development strategy. Things like tennis courts, when you put it in the bigger picture of open spaces and you're only doing that, it's not material and it's potentially a loss maker overall.
Councillor Ashton.
Yeah, I think when we had the initial briefing on this as cabinet, and we had the example from, I think it was Weymouth Town Council, they had took on a lot of the assets. Like obviously with Weymouth being a seaside town, there's obviously a lot of public toilets and things like that. And I think from what she was saying, they more or less sort of took nearly everything on, because everything was sort of, it was sort of the things that parish councils do. It was very local stuff and not really sort of something that a big unitary would want to get involved in. And you sort of think, why would they want to get involved in that just for that one area if they're not, like you say, if they're not doing it everywhere else? So it makes sense, really.
Councillor Willis, I think you were first, probably.
Yeah, so that's a case in point, isn't it? So the Market Hall, which is inextricably tied with the events management for the town, for the square as well. So that would normally be a parish function, but then you've got like the Market Hall, which is attached to it. So how do you separate those two things?
Fine.
Yeah.
Not expecting you to provide all the answers tonight.
And it gets particularly complicated in that because the street market and the Market Hall potentially operate under different legislative environments as well. And one's a charter market, one's not, one's Food Act, one's not. So it's quite complicated, those two. And actually, when you're talking about several members of staff, it does become quite tricky to run.
Councillor Brimden?
Maybe slightly out of turn, but which full council will this recommendation go to?
So anything in what we're asking council at the moment will be to support the setting up of the parish in principle and the principles for consultation in phase 2. The actual recommendation of what goes into the reorganisation order, it'll have to include, as I say, allotments, but not anything else, will go to council in September. So what we could do, if you're happy, is I think we've got some meetings in July time where we can get into this in a bit more detail about how do you want to play this for the reorganisation order.
Any comments on that? Does that make sense, Councillor Knowles?
Yeah, I think this is just testament to what we said a few minutes ago when you and I were agreeing. Basically, we got to keep this not predetermined and very open, because obviously we've got time to develop this. The first important thing to do is take the next step forward and get council to agree, and then it gives us the opportunity then to develop these other sections and to do it in detail, and then that way we can make sure we cover everything up, because none of us know what the government are going to come up with in the next, I was going to say the next 5 minutes, in the next few months. I mean, we just haven't got a clue. Anything can happen, and when the the orders, the orders are put forward and everything for the new unitaries. We just don't know what it's going to be. All sorts of things should come out. So I think all we can do is progress what we can progress sensibly and then be ready to move the other things.
I think it's very sensible. So, Councillor Asher?
Sorry, just another quick question. Something popped into my head. The Market Square, is that owned by LCC? I'm sure it is. Yeah. Yeah, so that could be another spanner in the works because that's not ours.
Presumably that'll be something that happens in the future of whatever happens in the LGR as well. So, Councillor Bremner?
I'm just looking at the timescale then. So full council will have the paperwork before them in September. The elections will be in the next May. Is there any stage between that September and those elections that we still have to go through? Because the members of the public will have to put themselves forward and then give themselves a bit of a profile for election, and time begins to get quite short. So I just wanted to know that if there's anything between September and say April time, still to complete.
So what this recommends is the special expenses panel would act as a shadow council. So I'd take reports to that panel, updating you on process and what we're doing. Primarily, because of the nature of this, what we'd be doing is at some point appointing an interim clerk who would make sure things are set up for the first meeting after the first elections and sort out a little induction pack for new councillors and start sorting out things like a website and emails and all that sort of thing, although we could possibly do some of that as well. And
I think you got my question. It says in the paperwork on page blank that it's on the page opposite your yellow mark. That makes sense. And it's at the bottom under transfer of rights, properties, assets, and liabilities and staff. It says it's proposed to wait until the new council is established. The elections take place in May 2027. So is that proposed to wait? Is that wait for the actual parish councillors that we've been discussing, the 16? When is their election? Because it's
27.
Yes, this is what's confusing me, because you said we would be a shadow. We would be a shadow on that period. So, forgive me. I just want to get this clear in my mind. Is the shadow? Wait. Is the shadow? I'm speaking, not you.
Steady.
Is the shadow, which is the elected district councillors, are they meeting at the same time as the elected parish councillors, or is it the first for May 2027? The elected parish councillors are the shadow. I just want the public who are listening to this to know when they can get elected.
Okay.
I'm trying to get to the bottom of. It's
shadow,
not clear here.
existing district councillors act as a shadow for after council in September says, yep, all go ahead, makes reorganisation order, you become shadow. That operates until the parish elections in May 27. Parish are then elected and they have full parish councillor status from May.
Councillor Woodworth.
Just a query on that. I thought the reorganisation order had to be made in November, so the parish would be formed in April.
It has to be made by November. We're aiming for September because we need to get it done before the structural changes order comes in for the local government reorganisation.
So the parish exists from the moment the reorganisation.
The parish theoretically exists. It doesn't take on any functions, powers or responsibilities until the 1st of April.
Okay, right. So it's a shadow until the 1st of April where it becomes a shadow and then it's elected in May.
Right. Councillor Knowles.
Just a question on the structural changes order. What happens if this comes in early? And I know that's a hypothetical question, Leah, but obviously we've had so many, having spent the last God knows how many years sitting through a load of this, we've had so many promises that have just gone up in smoke. I'm just trying to gauge in my own mind what happens. And that's a leading question.
Okay. So we are expecting in the next few weeks, the government will announce the proposals for Leicestershire.
Yeah.
After that, we will begin work on a structural changes order. In fact, some of the things are already being thought about anyway. But the big thing that goes into the structural changes order is the future council size and warding arrangements for the new unitary. The submissions have to be developed and then reviewed by the Boundary Commission, who might come backwards and forwards a few times on proposals. And with that in mind, we are not expecting that we'd have any proper drafts of that until late November, towards that time. That's where I'm working on at the moment. In the unlikely event, well, I think unlikely event, it's looking increasingly unlikely, it's a bit earlier, we need to be prepared. Now, if the structural changes order was made before we've issued the reorganisation order, so we've established the new parish, then what happens is we can't make the reorganisation order. That has to go to the shadow authority of the unitary after their elections in May 27 and the new parish is established from May 28. So we are doing what we can to avoid it because we just think it'd be much better, but it doesn't stop it happening altogether.
I was just going to ask, is there some way we can get a table with a timeline with some of these permutations actually in it?
Yeah.
Because I just think it's too hard to kind of deal with as a concept in my head. Yeah, is that possible?
I'll pop one in for the council report.
She?
Only, sorry, Chair, through you.
Go ahead.
Only if the structural changes order to create the new unitary is made before we do our reorganisation order. We are doing everything we can to avoid that, and keeping it simple avoids that in particular.
Right, Councillor Asher, please.
Thank you. You've touched on employing a clerk, and that would have to come obviously before the elections. How quickly do you think that would come? So obviously from September onwards, there would be a parish council as such without councillors sitting on it, but elected members would take care of it. So would we then go out and advertise for a clerk as soon as possible? And what would be the mechanism? Who would decide who to employ, etc., etc.? And how would that be paid for?
Leah?
Now, I might propose we do that at the next meeting of the Special Expenses Panel after the council in September. So I'll bring some proposals to you at that meeting.
Any other questions on this particular point?
But yeah, so if we do miss it, we just need to stress that obviously the parish then needs to pay for the out of sync elections, which costs how much? Just remind us. 50,000. So that needs to go into the preset then, doesn't it?
Yeah, if you ran them in sync, it depends how many elections you're splitting, and we still don't know whether it'll be splitting 3 ways or splitting 2 ways next May. There are some costs that have to be incurred by each. So, you know, the cost of printing ballot papers, you have to incur your individual costs, but it would be a lot cheaper. I was just going to say, Chair, the original question was whether we should do some consultation about potential priorities and asset transfers for the parish. I'm getting the feeling that it feels really complex and difficult for this right now.
I would say that's a bit of an understatement. I think we do probably need to understand more of that process and the permutations of it. And I know we've got this big thing called LGR sitting over and whatever else that might mean. And you're quite right. You know, who would know? A change of prime minister coming up, change of emphasis, whole thing could change. I doubt it. My personal feeling is they've gone too far, and I think I heard somewhere at county that there was a sense that civil servants are now pushing this because they put so much work into it. It can't seem to fail in that sense, but I don't know whether that holds any water at all. But who knows? If the political will was to abandon it completely because it's too hard, it's possible. But anyway.
We'll just get maybe a memo.
So, Leah, I do think it is probably, it would serve a benefit for us to kind of have this in writing very clearly laid out. Do you want to come back to this point?
Not especially. I mean, what I can do is certainly increase
Can Leah just finish and then I'll come to you?
I'll certainly put a timeline into the report, try and make that as clear as possible. I can beef up some of the things we say about what would happen in terms of implementation as well, and how the interim phase might work. And then potentially we'll leave out the consultation on the assets and prioritisation. But that doesn't mean to say that, you know, the special expenses panel could ask for some work to be done in the future. So it's not ruling it out altogether.
Okay, Councillor Brimner.
I think the recommendation is agreed to proceed to a second phase of consultation in line with the proposals included in at Appendix 2. So I think the chair was saying obviously wants fleshing out some of the assets, but couldn't we use that fleshing out of assets for the consultation so we can get the recommendation for the as it is written so that we move forward and that it's clear when we consult that you can, I don't know how you do it as a map or whatever, for the public to see where assets are, and then they can make a decision on what they're being asked, whether they would like which or whatever asset included in the parish council.
Any comments on that?
Because I think if we ask for more information to us, it's just going around in circles a little bit. Because this is about consultation. It's how that consultation takes place.
Yeah, but I think there's another piece, Paul, which is we've got to make sure we actually understand the process that we're getting into, and if we're not clear that the public, well, I don't think I am. I don't know whether anyone else is really, but I think we need to be really clear when we're going out to the public that there is a clear process that's being followed, and it's being clearly articulated that anyone here can pick up and follow. Councillor, I don't know who was first. Councillor Knowles.
I mean, what I would say, Chairman, is, you know, I understand what Councillor Brennan is saying, but I think the difficulty is with this. It's all too easy to start raising aspirations here, and people are going to take one look at it and think, oh, great, we want to do A, B, and C, and it's not in our remit to deliver a lot of it. I think we've got to very carefully understand what we can and can't do and make sure that what we end up proposing is something that can be delivered, because at the end of the day, the parish council, the new unitaries, there's all sorts of involvements in this, and I just think we've got to be so careful. You know, we're in favour of it. We've got to put on the table, as we said, what we've automatically got to deliver, and then have the debate about what we can deliver, but in a controlled way. I think that's very important.
Councillor Asher.
Yeah, I tend to sway to the point of that we should consult as much as we can and find out what people would like to see looked after by the parish council. There's no harm in asking people. Obviously, we have got to manage expectations, and that can be put on the paperwork. And I also think if local government reorganisation didn't happen, we should still look at having a town council because it's what the public wanted. And I strongly think that whether we're going into a unitary or not, and this is probably a conversation for another time, I would strongly think that we should carry on and look at having a town council, because that's what the public voted for.
Leah?
I mean, given some of the concern is about complexity, we could make it very simple and say to people, we're taking the opportunity to ask you, when a parish council is set up, what would you like it to focus on?
Okay. Councillor Woodwards?
Yes, I agree with everything everyone said. I think the point I was going to make, referring back to Paul's comment, was it's in our gift right now to give these assets away. But if we do the consultation, that will run up to the reorganisation, which will run up to the strategic kind of like reorganisation report. And at that point, we lose that gift. So there's no point even putting in the consultation now because the timelines are against it. So yes, I agree with you, Leah. Keep it simple. Just ask people what they'd like in it. For me, I've always said maybe we should concentrate on youth services as well. So that's a personal axe of mine. But yeah, just keep it simple.
Any other comments on that? Leah, do you want to make a final statement?
We will have two more things I'll ask, but they will be more straightforward. But essentially, yeah, I could happily put in the consultation. We won't consult on specific assets and priorities, but we'll just have an open question that is useful information as the parish council gets going.
Okay, so we're all in agreement with that then, effectively. Okay, cool.
So hopefully the next two bits might be a bit more straightforward, but they're combined. So I mentioned in the report that it's normal at this stage to send a letter to every affected household. So that would mean every household in the unparished area. Now, we understand that's going to cost nearly £12,000 if we did it directly with Royal Mail as like a letter in an envelope addressed to that household. But if instead we employ a direct mail company, the sort that puts letters through your door, it's going to cost about £1,500. So that's a very, very significant saving. So the first question will be, what do you want to do? If you did want to do a direct mail shot, the problem is if we did the next thing as well as a letter, we'd have a problem with the budget. In fact, we've got a little bit of a problem with the budget of the letter, but we might just be able to accommodate it. But we've also got the option, it was mentioned last week, of a tag on the bin, which is a good way of bringing it to people's attention. Now, we've been told by FCC this would cost about £2,200 for the delivery and putting it on everyone's bin. We'd also have to pay extra, and we haven't yet got any quotes for this, for printing and production. Of course, they need to be a little bit firm. They're not just a piece of paper. So I think it will be a little bit of a cost, but potentially it'd be really helpful to get the direct mail shot versus letter agreed tonight in principle. And then the bin tags, I can always consult you on. We've got some quotes about prices.
Okay, comments on that then, please. Councillor Woodibus.
Yeah, I think maybe my preference would be for the mail shot, but we do need to clarify. So the issues we've had with the newsletter going out with these companies, we've been told it's going soulless every time it's delivered with a bunch of leaflets. So it just obviously goes into the recycling. So what mechanism will that be delivered by? But as we've already discussed, if it goes on Royal Mail walks go out of the district into the parished areas. So people who aren't affected by this will get that. So the most expensive option is off as far as I'm concerned, because it's informing the wrong people. But yeah, we do need to clarify how that delivery will look and whether or not it'll be effective. So it may be the bins, as you say.
Any other comments? Councillor Knowles.
Yeah, when we do these mail shots by the companies delivering them through the letterbox, there are several different ways you can do that. You can either have them packed as part of a mass delivery or something a little bit more sort of identifiable, so it's not going in the middle of 20 pizza and 5 restaurant menus and suddenly dropping through the door and everybody, as you quite rightly say, thinking, oh, that's a load of rubbish, and in the bin he goes. I think we need to identify that and we need to come back. I think obviously if we also need to maximise the assistance of the press. We need to be saying to the press and the websites, etc. We really do need people to get involved in this. I'd also suggest that we need to, again, and this was something we talked about before, and it didn't happen to the degree that we wanted it to, is to have 1 or 2 maybe public events where people can actually come in to a proper public meeting, couple of public meetings, and hear what's going on and get the details. I think it's a maximum engagement that we can, and I think that's important as well. So I don't think we should shut the options down at on anything at the moment. We should need to look at all of it and understand in a bit more detail. So just another little job for you, Leah, to come up with the information on.
Thank you. Do you need to want to say anything, Councillor Ash?
I'm happy to support the mail shot. I think the 12k is an awful lot of money to spend. But again, I do have concerns over the multi-mail shots, because I know that's what happened with our newsletter when it shouldn't have done. It should have been going out solus. So that is something that we need to be mindful of, that it doesn't just get put in the bin.
Councillor Brimner. I'm encouraging you to do so.
Thank you. I agree with everything that has been said really about the mail shot and the disinterest in the Royal Mail. The only other thought I had, and it might be too complex, obviously you've got 2 large schools in the unparished area. Yeah, well, it's giving me that, Sheena. I don't know, stand outside a school gate.
might end up having people who are not in that area.
Do you want to speak on the
But they may do, but an awful lot. It's like anything. If you create a buzz around something, people start talking about it, and the best place to talk about it is at the school gate.
Thank you, Councillor Foss.
I'll use the microphone this time, Chairman. I think the thing is that obviously with the schools, it's a difficulty because people live in areas that aren't actually impacted by this. I really would say that we need the maximum opportunities to engage. As you say, we've got to create a buzz that people start talking about it. And I'll go back again to what I said about this thing with the public meetings. We were going to do a public meeting, not just a drop-in session, a proper public meeting where we're going to get people and say, this is what's happening, this is phase 2, this is what you need to know. And also, I think we need to be engaging with the press as well, saying, this is what we think. Well, I think we'd also be encouraging any of the neighbourhood groups who, again, want to get involved to actually start to publish this information through their websites, etc. Just maximise every opportunity.
Okay, I think we're probably all in agreement on that then.
I was just checking, it's not explicitly clear whether the mail shop would be included with others or on its own. I'm guessing based on the price it's included with others. But we can potentially, what we can do is say, in principle, a mail shop by itself if we can, and bin hangers if we can. I'm a little bit nervy about hanging around school gates. I won't get into that too much, but we can have a look at those two options and then do the round robin emails of this is how much it's cost, and then get prices based on that.
Okay, so we're all in agreement. That's the next step. Okay, cool. That's it. Okay. Well, if that's the case, do I need to actually put anything else to the meeting here? Is that it on here? We've agreed to proceed to the second phase. Okay, the head of democratic services.
Yeah, so essentially the third recommendation essentially just gives me authority to
do all the work.
To do all the well, to approve everything in consultation with yourselves.
I think we could all be in agreement with that. All right. Okay, taken as agreed. Okay, lovely. So in that case then, no urgent business. Meeting is closed at roughly 24 minutes past, 25 past. There we go.